All right. Welcome once again to the White Lotus of Light interview series. Today, I am absolutely thrilled and honored to have Sami Richard on my show. Sami is committed to a life in service of truth, using his own personal experience, research, and intuition as a guide to explore reality beyond the narrative dictated through society's conditioning that disempowers the individual in favor of a collective groupthink that rewards compliance and limits human freedom and spiritual sovereignty. This is the basis behind his initiative Shifting Timeline that provides tools to help shift down a new trajectory in alignment with the individual's authentic purpose. And so I just wanted to say to the viewers, if you enjoy the content in this show, and I'm sorry to ask this, but I would humbly ask that you like and subscribe so that way I can continue to have amazing guests like Sami and others. And so I won't mention it again, but thank you so much for liking and subscribing. Sami, brother, I've been wanting to have you on the show for a while now. We finally were able to
there in the end, didn't we?
Yeah. And so, Sami, I'm just going to open with kind of a broad question, and I look forward to how you're going to answer this. Just tell me some of your thoughts on the state of the world right now, especially in spiritual terms, because I see you as like someone who puts out like really powerful spiritual and mystical messages. And so, tell me your thoughts on what's going on in the world right now.
Okay, so I believe the events of 2020 could have been anticipated in one respect for those who have been following this narrative playing out and who have kind of tied all the pieces together. So to me, it wasn't unsurprising, although it was a bigger event than I probably anticipated. And that's obviously set the wheels in motion now for both of these polarities to intensify in either direction. So we have the positive awakening, if you like to call it that, whatever fits best for you. We have that intensifying, and then we also have the kind of darker energies and negative agendas intensifying as well. And I think that's on a spiritual level is reflective of this ultimate good evil archetypal battle that has been permitted on some level by the divine will in order for us to learn more about ourselves ultimately. And I always say to people, if it wasn't supposed to happen, it wouldn't be happening. Right. But likewise, we can't attempt to predict how it's going to happen, because we as humans, we have free will, and we've been allowed to make choices depending on our free will, and that results in the conditions that we experience in the collective, in the external. And it just so happens at this time in this cycle of human history, we're reaching this kind of tipping point now where consciousness is elevating, and there's a equal and opposite force in action as well, which is being met, causing this loggerheads, I suppose. But I don't see it as a negative thing. I don't see it as particularly positive either. I just see it as what it is, and I know that we have to just play our part because we've chosen to be here at this time. So I'm quite embracing of current events, and I don't shy away from the negatives. I look at everything as a holistic whole, and I understand the importance of bringing the darkness into unity, into synthesis, so that we can integrate it both within ourselves and in the world. And that's the ultimate learning experience for us. And how we choose to do that will determine the outcome from here. But like I said before, I don't think we're supposed to know the outcome. That's just down to our choices.
Yeah, that's very well put. I'm a Vedic astrologer. It's the main thing I do career-wise. And so I look at things often through a astrological or cosmological point of view. And I don't know, are you familiar with the Hindu Yuga system? The different ages, like there's the Golden Age, Silver Age.
Yeah, I am, yeah.
And so there's an Indian scholar who I had been searching for 13 or 14 years to find an explanation as to when the current yuga, the Kali Yuga, which we're in, the Iron Age, would come to an end. And I had looked for quite some time, and I eventually found this Indian scholar who he had, I don't know, like a 50-page treatise on the, you know, all the possibilities. And I was blown away because I had researched almost all the possibilities he listed, but he even had found several more. And eventually, after this big, long 50-page thing that probably someone who's not like me wouldn't be interested in reading, he came up with the date. And I have a gift of claircognizance, or I just have the ability to kind of hear when something's really true. Even if it's something I don't like, whether I like it or not, I can just hear if something's true. And he gave the date of 2025 as being when the Kali Yuga ends. Now, there's a 150-year transition period before and after the Yuga approximately, which tend to be more chaotic, more, you know, just exactly what you expect in a transition state, you know, in physics or anything else. There's a lot of chaos. There's a lot of potentiality there. And that doesn't mean that like on 2025, January 1st or something like that, that it would instantly shift and everything would be beautiful. It just means that certain things on a vibrational level will no longer be possible. And that I resonated immediately when I read that. And, you know, that was maybe 2-3 years ago that I read that. And then, you know, 2020 happened and I was like, holy smokes, like this is really crazy. And I saw a leaked World Bank document last summer, and it was in some video, so God only knows where I saw it, but it showed that March 31st of 2025, which is also the end of Q1 of 2025, is when their money for the, you know, the current virus everyone's worried about, that monetary money they had set aside for it would end, and all the funding around it would end. And so those two things in combination are interesting. And that implies then that this next 3.5 or 4 years are incredibly important to this transition. And on that note, there's a lot of people who have this discussion of a concept, and we're going to get to your website here shortly, Shifting Timeline, which is just fantastic. But there's this concept that's going around in a lot of spiritual and mystical circles about a bifurcation of timelines, or a split in reality to some degree. And to some degree, I feel like I'm already experiencing this. You know, you talk to some people and I'm like, hello, are you there? Like, are we even on the same planet? Like, you just almost talk right past each other. And I mean, this idea has been in many prophecies all throughout the world. The Hopi in particular have a petroglyph that goes into great detail about this specific thing and seems to be pointing to this exact period of time. And I'm just curious, Sami, what do you think about this concept of the bifurcation of timelines? Do you think that's something that has weight to you?
Yeah, the whole concept of splitting or bifurcation came to me quite organically through my own experience, which felt more real than understanding it as a concept. But when I saw, you know, research that validated it, it gave it more, you know, value. And that's the way I tend to approach most things. I'll use a combination of my experience and research that comes to me intuitively. And that's how I know something is more true. I won't say it's definitely true, but it's more likely to be true. And I think the experience should precede the research, because we're interfacing with physical reality with our consciousness, which is creating our reality. So what we experience directly is likely to be the best scientific form of evidence for anything. And this is another thing I say to people who deem spirituality as unscientific or pseudo. They perhaps haven't experienced that phenomena themselves, so they're more skeptical about it, and they're taking the advice from something external rather than allowing it to happen through their own personal experience. So it's kind of, it's, you know, the whole seeing is believing saying. I like to flip that on its head and say that believing is seeing. When you open up to something, it will start to manifest in your life. So it took, it was a few years ago that I really delved into this bifurcation phenomenon, because I started to see it happening, like you said, in my personal life on subtle levels at first, through, you know, synchronicity and attracting things that were in alignment with my unique path, and things that weren't serving me slipping away. And it didn't require lots of effort or stress, whereas in the past it did. I had to relinquish unhealthy attachments, remove addictions, all these things that were plaguing and holding me back from being my highest expression. And that's an ongoing process, obviously. And as the world and the collective started to experience more turmoil, I felt like my individual life was able to navigate around that. And I found that interesting, because you would assume one to be swallowed by the darkness if that's what's immersing the world at that time. But I found myself able to make the right choices, intuitively guide around the chaos, and to then be of service to others. And that's kind of where that brand name, Shifting Timeline, originates from. Again, it was a natural process. It wasn't just, oh, what shall I call this name? It came to me in a moment, and that was it. It was based on, like you said, the bifurcation, splitting timelines. And I thought splitting timeline, shifting timeline, because that kind of denotes a personal and a collective shift, which both are important. As we start to do it within ourselves, we'll see it reflect outwards. And then people say, well, how can you change the whole world by just changing yourself? And the answer is, you're not really supposed to try and change the world. You just need to work on your personal corner of reality. And then if you're like the center of your web, it's always a good analogy I use, and then you're attracting what's a reflection to the center of that web, and it expands outwards and outwards. And before you know it, it encompasses a wider portion of external reality. And then you'll start to see things maybe in the news, the media, things like that. You'll start to see changes occurring that are more positive. And I'm not saying we necessarily change that entire outcome, but we certainly did shift onto a different trajectory where we're at least perceiving events differently. For example, what's going on now, you could perceive it as being doom and gloom, like authoritarian takeover, or you could see it as a necessary crumbling of a dying paradigm that is no longer serving us. And I think both are true, but if you're on that side of the bifurcation process, I think you're going to view things in a more positive way. So when I said earlier, I don't see things in a negative or positive, I do have an overall positive outlook in terms of where humanity's going, but I don't like to say that, because I believe it's important that we don't get complacent and that we still use our free will and make the right choices. Otherwise, if we just sit back and think it's all going to manifest, then we're falling into these new age kind of fallacies of just solipsism, if you know what that is. The idea that you create your whole reality yourself and no action is required. So the splitting of timelines, does it still entail action and right choices, and you have to actually do what you need to do, but the intuitive aspect of it will help to guide those choices more effortlessly, so that you kind of know what to do rather than having to utilize too much of your mind to make those decisions, and therefore you'd be less likely to be led astray. So one more thing on that, I think this bifurcation has a lot of different interpretations. The one I try to avoid is this idea of splitting into this utopian commune type society straight away, where everything's just self-sustainable and we're in alignment with all of our tribe and there's no issues anymore, the shadow's resolved itself. That's not going to happen anytime soon. And it's an ideal outcome, don't get me wrong, and it's something I would love more than anything, because it's closer to our truer nature, and it's a state of being I believe humans once existed on this planet. But I understand that I'm where I am situated now for a reason, and that I'm here to anchor my light onto this planet and to help assist others. I didn't come here to run away from the world's problems, because that defeats the whole my purpose. For me, I want to help do as much as I can while I'm here, and I don't stop at the end of this lifetime. I believe, our soul will continue on its journey, and what we do here will also contribute to what we experience and where our consciousness will go after the physical death. But likewise, I still want to make my life on this planet as fulfilling and peaceful as possible. So if we can execute this bifurcation within ourselves, then we will hopefully start to see that reflect in the people that we meet and the new world that we build.
Wow, that's fantastic. I completely agree with all that. I especially like the part that you talk about of where, you know, one of the things that I see throughout I don't know how to describe it, the people who are sort of liberty and free will oriented. It's sort of the way I look at it. People who believe that we should have the right to associate with who we want, to speak our truth, to have whatever beliefs, to have worship as we choose, you know, kind of things that we're at least in the United States, where I am, you know, we're sort of enshrined in our Constitution, this idea of just, you know, I used to not really care about a lot of these principles as an American. We all, I think, kind of got lazy and complacent here. And, you know, 20 years ago, we had a pretty big event that led to a really rapid curtailing of a lot of these liberties. And that's when I really started to realize the value of just being able to sort of, within reason, you know, because part of liberty is you don't impinge upon someone else's liberty. Basically, the people who are on the side of free will and people being able to do as they wish within that context, I noticed that there is one thing that I find disheartening, which is this idea of some white knight's going to come in and save us. It's AI is going to save us. It's aliens that's going to save us. It's some secret white hats in the military or intelligence are going to save us, or, you know, or the new age concept of, oh, love and light, love and light, love and light. I don't need to do anything except for maybe buy organic food, you know, but love and light, and that's going to fix everything. And all of those are different traps within the context of what you're seeing, because we really have to, yes, we have to do that spiritual work, but we have to, first of all, face and acknowledge this darkness, integrate it, the shadow within ourselves, and then take action within our own lives and to move things in the direction that we want. You have to take action. And I don't mean like radical, crazy action. I mean, you know, simple, loving action, building community again. Just talking with one another in an authentic and honest way. Even that is almost a revolutionary act at this point, because we're so separated.
Yeah, and also people, a lot of people criticize social media, which of course has obvious downfalls. That's self-explanatory. But right. Even the act of speaking the truth in itself is a form of action taking. We don't want to be reliant upon it or use it as the only outlet to take our action. But certainly, you know, even just sharing what we know and building community in that way can still make a big difference. It still creates a knock-on effect, a ripple effect in our own way. And if loads of people are doing that and we're connecting in a kind of quantum way, then that is still a contribution. So we shouldn't diminish any efforts, including people who go to protest. Maybe you don't like going to protest, I don't like going to protest, but there are those that benefit a lot from going out and being able to meet people and to just being able to share their truth. And I've attended a couple in the past and I have gained value for them. I don't tend to go to them that much. I know they can be infiltrated, but even the act of attending and showing your face and being that extra number in itself, along with the social media, those two things shouldn't be underestimated. And then, you know, there's other forms of action you can take as well.
Yeah, absolutely. And that is a great segue, I think, into, I want to talk about your 4 main principles on your Shifting Timelines website. And I'm going to real quick pull that up so people can see it, because it's, I got to say, it's a very impressive design. I really like it quite a bit. And so here we are, viewers. This is Sami's gorgeous looking website. I mean, it's really well made. And I want to talk to you about kind of these 4 main principles, which are conditioning, awakening, embodiment, and evolution. And so Can you tell us what, in the context of your website and what it has to offer, about conditioning? And I think that relates quite a bit to what we were just talking about.
Yeah, so the idea of the 4 stages is supposed to be cyclical. So it's a process of coming full circle. So when we start our lives, obviously, we're subject to environmental influences from our early years, from our parents, our teachers, and our peers. And that extends to teenagers when we're more influenced by social media, which is obviously, this is a new advent, isn't it? We've not experienced this before to this degree. So it's constantly changing the level of conditioning. But these millennials born after the 2000s who don't know any different to the technological world, they're facing much more engineering through the technological realm. And this is causing a short attention span, heightened ego, restlessness, and more brainwashing. And of course, there's benefits to the internet as well, but certainly in the framework of conditioning, I think that's probably the largest influence at the moment. And then it's all the traditional elements, from going to school to what our relationship was like with our parents, if you know about the attachment theory in psychology, the relationship with our primary caregiver, that will either normally the mother, or if it could any primary caregiver if we're adopted, anyone that's there for the child and provides their needs in the early years. That's imperative for their development into adulthood. So those critical years between 0 and 5 will often determine how much shadow we have and have to work on later in life. And some people never get to evolve beyond that because the conditioning so deep rooted that they spend most of their lives unconscious and repressed, and they don't bring that trauma to the conscious mind. And we all have trauma in our own way. No one's exempt, whether we got it in this life or another life, or we've picked it up ancestrally. There's always going to be something to work on because the world, the conditions aren't that favorable at the moment. So that's the idea behind conditioning, and that extends up until the point where we decide we want to reclaim self-awareness. So the next section of the awakening is that moment where we start to remember who we are to some degree. We reclaim that seed of self-awareness and consciousness that was obscured by our ego and our personas, which isn't an enemy. I'm not trying to resist that. Again, this is another spiritual fallacy that the ego is this enemy that we need to just eradicate. It can be used as a tool to help learn about ourselves and to navigate the world and to build connections and to understand our shadow. But there has to be a point where we step on that individual path of awakening, and that's why I kept the name very simple for that. And I talk about the whole idea of the dark night of the soul in that section, which is a very imperative process that I went through. And
Can you repeat that? I'm sorry, the what?
The dark night of the soul. Have you heard of it?
Dark night of the soul, yes.
So a lot of teachers have talked about this recently. It's gaining a lot of popularity, and I really resonate with it for the same reason I told you earlier I do with the bifurcation phenomenon in my own way, because I've experienced it. So having gone through a series of dark night experiences, I can attest to the fact that I've always come out the other end stronger and more empowered, because I've allowed that time to introspect and integrate. And it's not a pain-free process, this awakening phase of the journey. And this is what I really want to address in that section. I talk about it a lot in my writing on social media as well, the necessity to delve into the shadow. And I don't mean this in the typical just, oh, I'm a Jungian psychologist or analyst who knows about the shadow. There's way more to it than that. And the process is very unique depending on the individual's learning requirements. So that makes up the bulk of that phase of the awakening, but it also entails other life changes like relationship restructuring, organizing our energy field to start to become more aligned with our authentic self. So once we start to integrate that shadow, I think that's the moment we can start to unlock a deeper spiritual potential, because we're clearing the gateway to allow spirit, to invite spirit into our being, or our own higher self. Again, this starts to go into spiritual waters of and definitions of what is God, but I don't like to delve too much into that. It's whatever connection you feel to the divine, I suppose. Could be your own higher self being accessed and embodied through the physical vessel. It could be that you feel a connection to something you might refer to as God. I don't think it's necessary for us to divide over these definitions. All that matters is that we do have that connection restored to our spiritual nature. Yes. And that's what I mean by embodiment, because it's not just a spiritual understanding, it's the very act of harnessing that spiritual potential and bringing it into this physical experience so that we can live it in this world, rather than, again, trying to spiritually bypass. And you know, the whole Buddhist philosophy is like, you can gain good value from them, but ultimately we're here for a reason, and we're not just here to try and ascend out of this physical experience. We're here to synthesize spirituality and physicality together so that we can become a vessel to actually create tangible change on this planet to help restore it. Otherwise, there again wouldn't be much of a point incarnating into a physical avatar in order to try and escape it. And I've been through that phase before where I feel a rejection to the physical world. I think many of us have experienced that resentment towards the physical world because we feel like we're kind of imprisoned within it. This whole idea of the Gnostics teachings of the demiurge, corruption of the demiurge, this idea that we're living in this prison, we're shackled by the physical world and we have to try and unbond ourselves from it. I think I don't subscribe so much to that philosophy.
You know, it's interesting. I just want to chime in there. There's certain principles of Gnosticism, in particular, having that direct knowing, that direct connection with God, that I've always resonated very strongly with. And likewise through Buddhist and Hindu traditions that I've delved into. I really like that. Don't take someone's word for it, experience it within yourself. And everybody, literally everybody, can experience that within themselves. But the thing that has never resonated with me with any of these teachings is really just this idea of exactly what you're saying of transcending it all together. And I think that it's because I think you and I are similar in the sense that we're here in part to help this transition period that's occurring right now. And I think that those teachings made sense in the depths of Kali Yuga, where it was like, listen, you can't do anything about the world right now. It's just, it has to go through this rank materialism and this like inhumanity and this extreme suffering in order to just really put evolutionary pressure on the species. But now we're getting to a point to where it's like, okay, that was then that kind of like, you know, just get out of here because it's too much and just radiate presence into the world. And that's really all you can do, sort of like Ramana Maharshi and some of the other great sages. But I really do feel we're going through a new stage right now. It's shifting. And that part of that is that, no, we need to be here. We need to be here now more than ever. And actually moving out into the world physically and experiencing the world physically while also anchoring that energy, anchoring that subtle energy that, you know, it comes from that Gnostic direct experience of God and your own integration of your own shadow, your own inner alchemy. But now the task is to radiate that energy in the world and take action in the world. And I just, sorry to chime in there, but I was like, it was such a.
I like what you just said about the time period. I thought that's an interesting way of looking at it, actually. The idea that in previous centuries, as we were in the midst of this dark Kali Yuga age, it may have had more potential. There may have been more potential to just simply radiate that energy, like you said, and just raise your vibrations. And we shouldn't definitely not diminish that, because we still need that now. But like you said, because we're at this precipice now of this transition, it does call for more action to complement that. So we don't want to throw the baby out of the bathwater here. And It's ultimately about achieving a high vibrational state and anchoring that onto the planet, and then taking action from there to fulfill our life's calling at this time during this important transition.
Yeah, absolutely. And let's see, did we get to evolution was the fourth principle you have on the website, and I wanted to hear more about what that means to you in this context.
Yeah, so following from the embodiment of higher frequencies within the body, that activates our nervous system, so we can start to anchor more light and reactivate dormant DNA. So we're getting more into spiritual territories now. This also includes stuff to do with the chakras and synthesizing the 7 chakras, and we could go on to other chakras as well, but most importantly, we want to work with these vortices within our body and the meridian channels. We want to understand ourselves from a holistic perspective, and once we are able to embody those elements, this includes the synthesis. Just before I move on to the evolution, it also includes the synthesis of the masculine, feminine polarities, the understanding of sexual integration, which people often misattribute to physical sex, when really it's an energy that resides in our body that has masculine and feminine principles that can be synthesized in order to achieve this inner union, from which we can then attract a potential partner, romantic partner, to help expand upon that. But until we've done that work within ourselves, we're not going to see it reflected in a partner, because they too have to have undergone that process. So embodiment really entails any aspect of integration that occurs within ourselves that enables the external to then respond. And then evolution's kind of completing the cycle. So it's kind of like conditioning, when we awaken. So it's kind of like an in-out process. Conditioning is kind of a restrictive, contractual process. And then the awakening's expansive, the embodiment's kind of vertical integration, and then the evolution's kind of back out again, evolving to higher potential, to expanded states of awareness. And this entails all of the multidimensional elements, like some of which we've spoken about, to do with Gnosticism, the Kali Yuga, I've mentioned them on the website, and the bifurcation phenomenon. That's where I think those things start to become more real, because we've already undergone that process through the other stages. So we're actually coming from a place of knowing rather than just thinking and intellectualizing about things. We actually understand that this spirituality is a real force, and we're participating in the creation of our future and towards the change that's occurring now in a very real way. And we can move beyond just reading it in the textbooks now and start to actually see it in the material, manifest world. So evolution is really that final frontier to reality creation. And from there, it just goes on infinitely. We could go on, we could potentially add more stages. But for now, I think those 4, for me anyway, help to encompass the individual process and our participation with the external collective domain, based on my own personal insights and intuition and experience. So that's the 4 stages.
It's interesting, because when you were describing the in and out and so forth, I was, especially then when you added the vertical, I was seeing a toroidal shape.
Yeah.
Like, kind of around you. It's interesting.
It like
I'm not sure why that image came to me.
That I often think of that image myself, actually. So that's a good depiction of it, definitely.
Interesting.
Holographic kind of representation. That's how it kind of is perceived to me as well. Yeah.
Wow, that's awesome. So I wanted to ask you, there's so much going on in the world right now, and everybody's focused on the pandemic. I mean, it's hard to ignore. It's shoved in your face every day. There's really nothing else almost to think about, because you can't go even through an entire day without it having shoved in your face. That said, I'm curious, Sami, what spiritual developments do you see taking place, either in your personal life, not so much within your own personal experience, although, if you want to talk about that as well, but what spiritual developments do you see taking place that seem interesting, in your interactions with others or in the greater world, that are perhaps, in your opinion, under discussed? And answer that however you want.
What do you mean in light of what's going on in the negative polarity? What
Well, I mean, it could be the negative polarity. It could be also positive polarity. I feel like the spiritual dimension of what's occurring in the world right now is under discussed, and I feel like there's elements of it that are very under discussed. I know that for myself, I've had tremendous synchronicities and manifestations occurring at almost a breathtaking speed, to where like I will have some sort of insight or a vision or a dream. And, it used to be I would have these kinds of things, and maybe it would take years or even decades before I would see the fruits of a really intense vision I had. For example, I had a vision that outlined, it was back in 2001, and outlined 9/11, the big crash of 2008, 2009, and then 2020. It wasn't like exactly that, although the 9/11 one was shockingly on point and was really shocking for me because I was kind of a muggle back then. And so I had this crazy vision, and then 9 months later 9/11 happened, and I was like, holy shit, it's that thing I saw. But now I'm having things to where I'll have like a dream or a vision. I just happen to have a clairvoyant vision experiences with some amount of frequency. And like I said, it used to take, months or years or even decades before I would see that something happen in the physical world that was relevant to the vision I had. And now it's happening sometimes the same day, usually within a week, no less. And that's an example personally that maybe helps clarify the question of. So
it does. Okay. So yeah, I think the concept of time speeding up is real. I've also felt that personally. I think whatever we're carrying in our psyche is increasingly manifesting, and that's a call to attend to the shadow, because I feel like inevitably, and this is why I said amidst the negative polarity, because obviously right now conditions don't seem very favorable. So it's a call to action for people to really start doing the genuine work. And if you haven't made that decision already, now's the time to do it. Even if you're someone who's made the wrong choice in recent months and done something you feel you can't recover from, I don't subscribe to the idea that there's no redemption for any spirit should they reclaim their soul from the hands of these engineers trying to extract it from them. But this is something that's been going on. I sort of talk about this a lot in my writing, something that's been going on for millennia, centuries, beyond our comprehension, this genetic engineering process, which is limiting our expression of our DNA and genetic coding. So we need to reclaim that. And there's different levels of that within each of us, depending on how conditioned we are, depending on our ancestral line, our own unique soul development. And it's down to us to understand where we're at and work from there. But we will also find more resonance with some people than others, depending on our state of being at the moment. So we're also going to find those soul tribes manifest as well more easily or effortlessly, even if only over social media. I mean, we wouldn't be having this chat if it wasn't for social media. So it's almost like using the dark polarity in order to our advantage, I suppose. So there are ways to use what's going on to our benefit until it reaches a point where we can start to create free from technological reliance. And that's what I want to work towards in my personal life. I have a lot of strong connections to people in the States. I think over there's a lot of good work going on. I think because the darkness there is more intense. I think it always has been. It's been like a boiling kettle over there for a while, and something's waiting to unleash. It's like a bubbling cauldron. And it tends to happen within the framework of politics in America, because there's always this Republican Democrat divide. So I think in America at the moment, the Republican Party are more on the side of truth, although in the past that may have been different. The same with the liberal conservative mindsets. So even on a political level, we're seeing something happening, though I try to refrain from attaching to political parties because historically they're all infiltrated from both sides. Even if one appears more positive, the pendulum tends to swing from one end to another. So I think, to answer your question, just about every aspect of the external and inner domains are intensifying at such a crazy rate that we could see such monumental change in just our lifetimes. Whereas in times before, perhaps, you know, the Stone Ages, the Iron Ages, progression was much slower. So I think this elevation of consciousness and move towards AI are both becoming so intense now that depending on which side of the fence you're on, you're going to become either more identified with the matrix, if you want to call it that, and you're going to find your behaviors becoming more mechanical, more just consumed by these unfavorable forces that are working through these people to even police their own citizens. And we're seeing the battle working through all of us depending on where our consciousness is. And it's important for more people to reclaim their awareness of themselves before they get swallowed deeper into this hive mind, this collective groupthink, which we're seeing as this really nasty behaviors we're seeing amongst those that are very attached to authority and need to have their reality dictated to them. But on the flip side, those individuals that have already activated their potential, they can carry the consciousness of hundreds, thousands of people that are still attached to this limiting paradigm, because once we've activated our spiritual potential, we can radiate so much potential and attract so many things to us. So like you, I've experienced increased spiritual phenomena in the last few months, and it hasn't all been particularly pleasant. I've had to take a lot of time out, even from social media, to really just work on the trauma and to really do the real work, because it's an ongoing process. And I know during this time I want to be of the best service to others, to help pull them out of this pit. I don't believe I'm going to ever fall back into that level of conditioning again, but likewise I still understand that I'm not perfect, and the inner work for me is ongoing. And we've all, you know, none of us are free from bad choices. That's just part of the human experience. So I've been working on really being authentic and making sure that I'm actually being true to myself, and radical self-honesty is probably the best term to describe that, before I then participate in the world again. And it's a kind of in-out process. We do the inner work, we come back out, then we get called to go back within again. And I think it's just important to listen to our bodies and trust the flow and what we should be doing at any specific time. I know that was a long-winded answer to your question. No. It's a very complex situation that has many facets to it. So I wanted to cover the whole spectrum there.
Oh no, I thought your answer was brilliant. I especially liked the part there at the end where you talked about radical self-honesty, the call to go within and then come back out. I've been doing that quite a lot the past few months. I've been spending quite a lot of time in the inner. I mean, I've been really, you know, a part of me, the rational part of my brain is like, you got to take action, you got to do X, Y, and Z and get everything in line and blah, blah, blah. And the other part of me is like, well, no, but this is the action you need to take. You need to go within, you need to work on this shadow that's coming up. You need to ask yourself, why are you getting so upset about X, Y, or Z external situation or relationship or whatever? And instead focus on doing that work. And then as I do that and I come back out, I'm noticing that, I don't know how to describe it better than, but reality is kind of like almost bending or shifting around me in response to this inner work that I'm doing. And the things like I'm saying, like faster manifestation, faster, you know, where I'll have, you know, some sort of prophetic vision or whatever, elements of it will come true within a day instead of it used to be much longer. And it seems directly related. And right now I'm sort of coming out of a very internal period that I've been in for the last few weeks or couple of months, and I'm feeling much more like ready to go out there in the world. And the other thing I wanted to comment on is I so appreciate what you just said. Like, I know you don't, label yourself anything, but I do know from reading your writings and reading comments that a lot of people look up to you for spiritual guidance or spiritual just pointers, whatever you want to call it. And I super appreciate your humility in what you're saying, because it would be easy, given that I've been around enough spiritual teachers, I've been around on the spiritual path for long enough that I can recognize when someone's really, really done the work, and you've really done a ton of work. I can see that. And the most impressive part of it all is what you just actually said, that you said, I'm not perfect, I still have things to work on, da, da, da. That's when I know that someone's in integrity. When I start to hear people go, I have elevated beyond making human mistakes, blah, 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 I don't have blind spots, things like this. I had a teacher that I followed for a long time started to talk this way. And I was like, ooh, the Homer Simpson backing into the bushes kind of gif, you know what I mean? Like, whereas what you just said is so powerful, because it also gives permission to other people to, rather than put you up on a pedestal, instead listen to what you say and find it within their own experience and recognize that you're saying that you're like them. And that allows then people to make mistakes. And I think that all the really authentic teachers throughout the millennia, they don't put themselves on these pedestals. It's other people later or even concurrently that put them on this pedestal. And that is actually the worst thing we can do when people are giving us these beautiful spiritual pointers that we then need to take and actually implement within ourselves, is to put them up to idolize them, put them up on a pedestal, because then it creates a distance and an unapproachability. Oh, you're the guru and I'm just the mere student. And that will lock you in that student mentality and start to think that this is some unattainable thing you can't get to, some deity or God or avatar or whatever that is beyond your reach. And that creates immediately a mental trap to where you'll never be able to expand beyond a certain point, because you aren't allowing it yourself. And we all have that free will to make that choice. And some of that goes back to the conditioning thing you said, that we start to put people in a mommy or daddy kind of role as this figure that's above and more powerful than us and knows more than us and all the rest. And it can be very limiting. And so I just want to say props to you, brother. Like, I really appreciate that humility. And that actually makes me more inclined to listen to what you have to say. I mean, I already love your stuff, but I mean, I'm just saying that to me is a mark of authenticity that's sadly lacking in a lot of spiritual circles I see today. I've been, one of the worst things about the past 18 months is how many, it's also, I guess, the best given what I just said, but how many heroes I had up on pedestals, whether I realized it or not, and they've just come falling down because I'm appalled at specific decisions they're making, which I'm sure you can guess, around certain medical interventions. And then I wouldn't mind if they did it themselves, but then going out and pushing it on others, even pushing it to a massive degree, saying that it's an imperative. I have found that to be gravely disappointing, to put it mildly. And many of them are people who have this air of, I'm beyond fault, I'm so perfect, blah, 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 I'm so knowledgeable, I was there in the 60s, or whatever their thing is. And so, fantastic. Sorry for my long-winded response to what you said.
I like it. Thank you for those kind words. And yeah, like you said, I think it's so important that we don't externalize our power to anyone, and I just want to help people activate their own potential, because I'm just an ordinary person that's undergoing my transition, and I'm sharing it with others in hope that they'll do the same. And we're past the days of needing gurus and external saviors and the like, because like you said, they've shown their allegiances, and more often than not, they're pledged to the wrong side of history. And it's important to be discerning of those that are put on a pedestal and automatically revered for having this spiritual transcendent persona, which if you actually look deep enough, you snuff out their inauthenticity. There's a air of smugness, subtly, that if you really dig deep, you will be able to see. And once you've seen it, you can't go back. Likewise, I don't believe in just calling everyone out before they've shown themselves through their obvious actions. And even then, you know, it's best to just keep the focus on what we're doing and unifying with the people that are in alignment. But this past few years has done us a huge favor in really consolidating what many of us intuitively felt already with certain teachers, especially in the new age. And some of these, a few of them have even shocked me. I was quite skeptical of most of them, but there was a couple. I won't go into the names because we can talk about that another time. But certainly, they've shown themselves to be frauds. Essentially, there's no better word for it. Really, they're batting for the other side. It's plain and simple. There's no nuances there. It's like you said, the way they've so overtly made statements about the choices they've made as if to try and influence their huge following base shows exactly what their true colors. So we need to just work free from that system of idolization. And the whole thing is flawed and just inherently corrupt. Maybe it's a reflection of their unresolved shadows. Maybe they are literally aligned fully with the darkness. Who knows? But regardless, we need to just relate on a more human level with the everyday person. And all of us, every single one of us that's not completely possessed and psychopathic anyway, has this potential to really activate their purpose. And it's not about validation and the number of likes and all of that. It's rewarding to hear positive affirmations about your work, and it's definitely a good sign that you're on the right path. But on the flip side, there's a lot of people just chasing validation to the point that they're lacking the integrity, and they're spending so long focused externally that they don't stop to play that surrender role, I suppose, and to actually just remember why they're here and what they're doing it for. And as much as it's useful to help others, it's also about ensuring that we're operating from a balanced and peaceful state, because that's the world that we want to create, right? We want to just live in peace. That's all I want. I'm not interested in anything else. I'm only doing this because I know that I have to do it, because something inside tells me that I have to. But ultimately, I don't want recognition beyond a certain point. I really respect kind words such as yours. That's different. But when it starts to go into the realms of ego and all this social media validation, that's where I switch off. And I just prefer people to listen and read what I'm saying and actually pay attention. I don't need it to be about me. This is a sign to me that people actually understand what I'm saying. And that's what I appreciate about you, is you've shown me and demonstrated that you actually connect to what I'm saying, rather than looking at things on a more superficial level. So yeah, thanks for that.
Fantastic. And I think that's a perfect segue into the final question for part one. And viewers, we're going to have part two, where I like to go into more personal, intimate questions. And I'm going to ask Sami some questions about his experiences of the past, 18, 20 months, and just some more personal questions in part two. And so for the final question of part one, what is a simple spiritual practice that you could recommend to the viewers, something that they could do, on a daily basis, just something simple that, that anyone could do, that doesn't require, a tremendous amount of a spiritual background or anything like that, just something that they can implement on a daily basis that you think will really help them to begin to unlock this process that you're describing?
I'd say just tune out of the external noise. Give yourself time to connect in solitude, even if that's uncomfortable at first, and really just surrender to the divine and feel it as a presence in your life, and understand that this experience is much greater than us, but it's working through us, and we're servants of the divine will, not servants in the sense of an externalization. It's both, isn't it? It works within us, but
Yeah.
there is something bigger than us. It's a paradoxical from this 3D level, really, but from the highest vantage point, everything's connected as one. And we can access that by tuning out from all of these distractions that have been orchestrated to keep us living unconsciously, whether that's just watching TV incessantly or drinking away our sorrows and insecurities, or using other people as a crutch to fill a void within us. We have to strip back those layers one by one, starting with the most obvious. I think that's an easy way of approaching it. For me, it was as simple as just turning off the TV, stop watching the news. I can return to that now because I'm able to view it from a place of balance and it doesn't trigger me anymore. But if you're someone who still believes in these media narratives, then the best thing is to just turn the TV off and start to undergo some internal inquiry, ask the right questions, use a critical mind, and you can access that state of inner knowing through simple exercises like just going out for walks, for example, spending more time in nature, wherever it is, finding spots that feel comfortable for you. Whether if you're in a city, it could just be a little hot spot that you feel you can connect to yourself in. It could be you could go out into the countryside. I'm not a huge advocate of just saying meditate every day straight away, because I know a lot of people can't keep that up, and I've struggled with that in the past myself, and I found much more value in just finding that peace in everyday activities, such as listening to music that I resonate with, feeling into it, walking. I love walking. I'm always walking every day if I can, even if it's just round the block or whatever. Anything that allows my mind to become more still, so that I can receive and access my intuition that's coming through my higher self. And you'll find the more you do that, the more you're guided to make more empowering choices. And then you start to experience these synchronicities and things that validate to you that there's something greater going on. And that gives us a stronger belief to then build upon that. And then we start to find that we're actually participating in creating our own reality to some degree. And that's how it's worked for me. And yeah,
I think that's beautiful, and I think that's so helpful. I would just add, for especially our younger viewers, that I feel like YouTube and Instagram and Facebook, while are wonderful, because again, we wouldn't be having this interview if it wasn't for Facebook. That's how I found Sami, but on the recommendation of my ex-wife, actually, and my son's mother found you some months ago and was like, wow, this guy's amazing, or maybe even a year ago. I've been following your stuff for quite a while now, but that said, a lot of people are spending an incredible amount of time scrolling Facebook and Instagram and getting that dopamine hit from the like, or getting into arguments about this, that, and the other thing, or just endlessly watching, YouTube or BitChute or Rumble or whatever, and for me, one of the things I had to get over was being a little bit too obsessed with, you can't even really call them conspiracy theories anymore, because it seems like the ones that weren't put there by, someone trying to prop up their website or government disinformation, seems like damn near all the ones I read of in the 90s have come true. So, whatever you want to call that, people, elites, machinations behind the scenes. I used to be very obsessed with that. And I know a lot of people I care about very deeply who are kind of on the path we're talking about, moving away from the hive mind and towards whatever more individuated, free will, sovereign beings, right? I think that's kind of a good way to describe the site we're on, because it's quite a hodgepodge of people from all walks of life. I mean, that's one of the things I find interesting, is how diverse, both in terms of physical characteristics, religion, race, everything, but also mind. Like, I find that there's just a tremendous greater amount of diversity, and therefore there's more argumentation that occurs on the side of people who are moving away from the hive mind. And I find that a lot of that is rooted in, and I see it as a kind of an embarrassing reflection of myself a few years ago. I was so, because I was able to predict things in advance, because I, was looking at power relations and money flows and things like that, rather than bullshit mainstream narratives. I was quite smug in how much more awake I was than other people and how much more I knew about this, that, and the other thing. And I wasted a lot of time in that. I was had this huge spiritual awakening. It began sort of with a political awakening around 9/11, but I spent, 15 years basically really exploring myself spiritually, becoming more and more spiritual. And I still paid attention to politics because of trauma and so forth, but I was moving more and more away from that. And then around 2015 or 16, I went back down in this very materialistic, politically focused realm. And I think that a lot of people are doing that because it's almost too much to bear what's currently happening. And so a lot of people are hoping that they'll find some kind of relief, that there'll be, aliens will intervene, AI, white hats, blah, blah, whatever kind of thing is going to come in and rescue them. And I understand that. Believe me, I understand that. But I, for one, do not believe that that's where salvation lies. I really believe it's in the kind of internal process that you're discussing. And then once you've done that internal process, once you're rooted in beingness, then you can perform action. But it really is order of operations. Go within first and face that shadow, face that fear. If you're afraid of what's happening politically, which is perfectly reasonable if you're an organism that wants to survive, feel that fear, allow it, allow yourself to break down, like the Dark Night of the Soul piece you said, allow yourself to break down. Do it consciously, though. I used to take what I would call cry baths, where I would process my trauma by actually just letting it flood out and consciously witnessing the tears and upset without having a narrative. Oh, I blame this person. Oh, this terrible thing happened to me. Oh, woe is me. This kind of stuff, which would have been perfectly fine for me to think based on the trauma that I experienced as a child. But I did that for years, and it left me traumatized and in a victim mentality. And it's when I started to express the emotion without a narrative, just letting it flow through me consciously, that then it would all of a sudden start to transmute. And it became more and more and more. I've had a rising peacefulness inside of me, which helps me to deal with the madness of what's happening in the world and feel empowered that I can do something. And I think that it would be really helpful for people who find themselves really caught up in what's going on politics-wise or conspiracy theory or whatever, to just shut that off for a while and just go in and ask yourself, why are you obsessively reading about this, that, or the other thing? Why are you obsessively scrolling through videos? I'm not saying don't pay any attention. I'm saying just take a step back, take a deep breath, and go within and work on it. And I'm saying this because I know there's people who are like me, who are trapped in that, and they just can't stop. They're like obsessively doing it. And I want to say you don't have to do that. It's not actually going to change anything. And actually what it's more likely to do is make you more and more and more stressed out and less and less and less empowered to actually make the kind of changes and take the kind of actions that we all need to take. And so I just want to encourage people to just, if you're finding yourself obsessively scrolling through social media or reading the latest conspiracy thing, just take a day off, just take a day off. And do what Sami's saying. Get out in nature, take a walk, meditate if you want to do it, listen to some music, call a friend, don't text, call a friend, talk to a friend, talk to a family member, have a real authentic conversation. Or if you're not in a place to do that, go within and just experience your emotional landscape and allow it, just allow it. And don't make yourself wrong. We've all made mistakes. Like Sami said, we've all done things we regret, but just allow yourself to be without being in a state of panic about what's going on. This isn't to say what's going on isn't frightening, it is. But just allow yourself a day. You can take a day off and just do what you need to do to take care of yourself and fill that chalice within yourself. Just refill it, and you'll be surprised what you have then to give to others. I'm sorry to go off on a long rant, but I just...
Well said.
I know a lot of people who are stuck in that political and whatever, especially now, because for the first time in a lot of people's lives, the politics is all too real. there's no escaping it. It's impacting your life in a personal way, which is good in a certain sense because a lot of people were totally unconscious about the political sphere to a degree to where things were moving in a bad direction because they were unconscious, that now they're like, oh shit, I need to pay attention. And that can become really obsessive. And what I'm saying is you'll find you feel better and you're able to also make the changes that you want to see in the world by taking a step back. So I just wanted to say that. And so, Sami, fantastic.
That's really well said.
Thank you, brother. I'm gonna go ahead and end part 1 here. Please do come back for part 2. I'm gonna ask Sami a lot of more personal, intimate questions about him and his experience in the world. And a lot of times people actually prefer that half over the side where we talk about the more mystical or political or technological things that often come up in these interviews. And so thank you so much for viewing. And if you haven't already, I said I wouldn't say this, but I will, hit like and subscribe. And it just helps the channel grow so I can get amazing guests like Sami and others on here. Thank you so much, Sami, and I'll see you for part 2.